Welcome to CPG Vibes. No scripts,
just chat.
I'm Alex Baer.
And I'm Wade Yenny.
Each episode is recorded live, and we talk all things food and beverage, and so much more.
Feel our vibe and search for CPG Vibes on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and make sure to give us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to sponsor our show with your product or service, email us at cpgvibes100@gmail.com.
Now, let's vibe.
All right, welcome to episode 151 of CPG Vibes. We are coming at you on our usual Friday, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock Eastern. Wade's at home, as you can tell, his usual background, but I'm in an undisclosed location. There's usually not a stone wall behind me, right? That's not typical. So I am up in Big Bear I'm doing some work up here, actually. We have some accounts up here. And right by the lake, which is completely frozen over, and I'm not going to go out there and ice skate. Wade, how's it going, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back home after traveling this week. I was in Rhode Island the majority of the week for the Check's Finer Food Show. So it's good to be back home. Got back last night and looking forward to a great show today with some pretty amazing fellas joining us for part deux. Is it deux? How do you say deux in France? Deux, whatever.
You know, like that movie,
Dos.
Hot Shots, part deux?
Exactly. It's part two. So, looking forward to it. So you're not going to go out there and snow, sleds, skate,
definitely not
anything?
No skiing. I don't want to break a leg. I don't want to run into a tree. It's just too risky for me. I'm very risk averse. That's my personality. And, the lake, as I mentioned, that we're near, is completely frozen over. And so in the morning, I was throwing rocks across the lake, and it was sliding like all the way across. It was awesome. And I was like, should I walk across or should I try walking on? I was so scared.
You're a cold plunge guy. I mean, what's the worst that can happen?
Dude, this wouldn't be cold plunge. This would be cold. This would be plunge to your death. It's like hypothermia, it's like 25 degrees, in that water. So I'm crazy, but not that crazy. So, but my wife and son, they're here, they're out right now. And again, taking care of some business today and just enjoying the weather, the air, feeling good. So getting some exercise. So with all that said, the business we're taking care of today is, we call that summer in Buffalo. That's fun. Kenny Hausman. Yep. This is warm for Buffalo. So we have our Master Series today, Volume 5, and this is a reunion. We brought the boys back. It's the original one was the Expert Series. This is the Master Series, CEOs Running Brands. So we brought them together before. We had such a great show. We want to bring it back again. No particular order, right? We're going to be bringing on in 5-10 minutes John Forker, CEO of Once Upon a Farm, Max Dichter, CEO of Fourth and Heart, and Jeff Church, who was a previous CEO of Suja and co-founder of Suja. And now he's doing a fundraising workshop, which we'll post the link to. And coincidentally or uncoincidentally, Jeff Church is our sponsor for this episode. And he has an upcoming workshop February 4th through the 6th. And it's free. I repeat, free. And we're going to have the link to that so you can sign up if you haven't signed up already. No brainer to be part of this. So a couple things, laundry list items, and we're going to go through this really quick so we can get to our guests. So number one, I always say number one. We are the number one rated CPG podcast in the world. Make sure to keep us that way. Go to Apple Podcast or Spotify and give us 5 stars. We have our back wall for sponsorships. As you can see, there's an opening. So if you want to have your product on our back wall, displays to anywhere from 40 to over 100 people live on every single episode, make sure to email cpgvibes100@gmail.com and you can grab that spot, and many, many, many eyes on each and every episode will see it. We'll also mention you verbally on every episode, and we'll drink the product if we have it. So our sponsors and again, this is interesting, Wade, because the air is so thin up here. I'm taking a lot more breaths and I'm getting winded even going through this intro right now. I'm just being honest. I'm getting winded sitting down here talking. So just bear with me, everyone. So I'll be taking a lot of breaths. So we have Feel Free, one of our sponsors here on the back wall. We have Melting Forest. And of course, whoever grabs the last spot starts at about $350 a month with discounts if you do long-term commitments. We have our YouTube channel, and we're going to be uploading that literally the minute we end. Wade's going to click the button, upload it. Also, I think, Wade, you noticed that the Apple Podcast and Spotify turnarounds are a lot faster now.
They are.
So they're going to be available within 3 to 4 hours after we air here. You don't have to wait till Monday anymore. So YouTube is youtube.com/@CPG Vibes. And I think sponsorship block rates, cpgvibes100@gmail.com. Did I miss anything there? I don't think I did.
Okay. No, I don't think so. I Curtis is giving me a hard time because he doesn't remember if I told you that I tried Lemonicious, which I did. It was everything I've tried is delicious. I have a couple more of the tiny ones left to try, so I can't remember those flavors, what I haven't got into yet. But awesome stuff, Curtis. Thanks again. So I had to at least mention that, Alex, because I know you're a big fan as well.
Enormous fan. And I'm a big fan of, first and foremost, him as an entrepreneur. He's a great entrepreneur, full of energy in life and passion. And then his product is also amazing. It's all about the Turkish mulberry. That's your
favorite?
Don't know what. I just love that ingredient in juice.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had juice until trying his product. So we can go through some comments here, kind of do old school, because this is a big episode. A lot of people are on, a lot of comments. So let's shout some people out, shall we?
Sure.
I can't even, it's not even showing up here because my connection's so bad. There we go. And again, bear with me. Might have some bad connection here because I'm up in the mountains here. Gavin Conkle, beard is looking good. It's Kenny Hausman. Sorry, buddy, about your team. I was rooting for them so badly, the Bills, to win. I was not happy, but maybe the Eagles will beat them in the Super Bowl. I'm a big Eagles fan because my family's from Philadelphia. So Jeff Likovsky, Curtis Knight in the house. Yep. Curtis is all over the show today. We should be drinking some Lemonicious. Did you tell X you finally tried her drinks? There we go. Robert Kogan, one of our big sponsors. Next week, fun with customs, tariffs, logistics, and inputs. Any specific questions related to. So we will talk about that. Robert recommended it, and we're going to bring that on the show because I'm wondering, are companies that import or export from Canada to here, are they going to be subject to tariffs, right? Like midday squares, right? These are all questions, and we can answer, and we can go through that. And we can bring, I think Robert will be on the show, I believe, or one of his guests. So we'll figure that out because we don't plan for anything on the show. Anything else? Think we're good there. Couple items of news that I'll bring up here before we, and we have Travis Gilkey, missed you, from Livermore International. We're in the UK now. There you go. How does it feel, Wade?
The same as when we broke into South America and New Zealand and Australia.
Indonesia. And
yes, I'm not downplaying the UK, but yeah, we've already been international. We're just branding out a little bit further. Yep,
exactly. We're spreading across the world, one CPG fan at a time. So I'd be remiss not to say that, read the news on Allie Kane and her business shutting down, Haven's Kitchen. I remember talking to her last year at Expo, where a lot was riding on some of the new launches she's doing, and she was doing last year, and it just sucked. It sucked to see that she shut down her business, had the business for many, many years, wonderful entrepreneur. So it was very painful to read that post, for sure. And sorry, Allie. And things will get better, and you're smart and resourceful and knowledgeable. So I'm sure whatever you do next, you'll land on your feet.
Yeah, I hated to see that as well, but I think my comment to her is how many people she's touched, and between her podcast, herself, she's just an amazing person, and just truly one of the good people in the space. So I have no doubt that while this is tough beyond words for her right now, I have no doubt that she's going to come back on her feet and stronger and better because of her experiences and all the connections and things she's made. So no idea what she has planned, but whatever it is, I'm confident it's going to be positive and moving forward, no doubt.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, she touched a lot of people. A lot of people love her. She has her podcast, the Haven's Kitchen
In the sauce.
in the Sauce. Yeah, podcast, and phenomenal podcast. So, yeah, I mean, I shut down Genius. We did, which I should say, Genius Juice about a year ago, almost to the day. It was sometime in February. So it's devastating, but you move on, and nothing ever goes to waste. All the experience that I learned, that she learned from running her business over that many years, can be transferred to something new, a new enterprise, a new venture, or just simply helping other entrepreneurs. And the C word, consulting, right? She can do some consulting, which is a popular route to go in where there's CPG founders that pivot to something else. And that's what I've done with my career. So Allie, we love you. And I think, Wade, we're going to do a show about founders that shut down their businesses. And I didn't even tell you about this because we don't plan for shit on the show, but it's going to be called, looking it up,
Founders that shut down their businesses.
Yeah, CPG shutdown stories.
Mm.
And we're going to have a columnist on there. We can invite Allie and some others, and obviously I have a lot to add on it. And so that would be a good episode to resonates with a lot of CPG founders that have gone through this, and others, and also tips to try to avoid doing that and how to, keep the business going, longevity. So with all that said, we're at the 13 mark, and we're going to be bringing on our guests here so I can talk less and save my breath, because, man, it is hard to talk. I'm trying to talk less because the air is thin up here. For those that are just tuning in, I'm up in Big Bear, undisclosed location, with a rock back wall here in one of the lodges. So beautiful up here. Beautiful. So let's bring on our guests here in no particular order. We have John Foraker, Once Upon a Farm, Max Dichter with Fourth and Heart, and Jeff Church from previously Suja. All right. How you guys doing?
Great.
Welcome, everybody.
Well, thank you.
Welcome back, right? Welcome back. So thanks, brought the band back together. There's a lot of great chemistry in our last episode we had with you three guys on, and people learned a lot. So we got a lot of requests to bring you guys back. So here we are. I'm just thrilled that I can talk less so I can get my oxygen mask. They actually sell oxygen masks up here at stores. So with all that said, we have a tradition, and it's going to be harder this time because you already gave up one kind of, not secret, but something we didn't know about you. So if you have to come up and scrounge up another one on this episode. So I'm going to start in the upper right corner with John. You can introduce yourself and let us know something else that we may not know about you, besides the fact that you were a blackjack dealer.
Hey guys, I'm John with Once Upon a Farm, and I grew up in Chico, California, painting rice harvesters and digging ditches and kind of being a farmer.
Did not know that about you, but it makes a lot of sense given where you're at right now. All right, and Max, my man, welcome to the show. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well, thanks. So looking forward to that round we talked about getting in soon here. Something you don't know about me, let's see, I grew up in Westchester, New York, so in the Northeast. And I grew up riding ATVs and snow plowing driveways as a young entrepreneur, and making money around the neighborhood with all of our neighbors, plowing their driveways while selling lemonade and in the summer, washing cars and all sorts of things to spark my entrepreneurial journey.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, did not know that about you. What area of the country again?
Westchester, New York.
New York.
Bedford.
Okay, is that upstate?
To most people who don't live in New York, yes, but for those that live in New York, it's only about an hour outside of Manhattan.
Right. It's very typical of a guy. I'm from LA, born and bred. I'm like,
Yeah.
either it's New York City, Long Island, or upstate. Those are the three areas that I only know about in my very limited knowledge of New York.
Max, is it Westchester or Bestchester?
Arguably both.
Yeah. And we're Poughkeepsie. That's the word. I remember that city too.
Yeah. Culinary
All right.
Institute of America is up there.
What's up there?
The CIA, Culinary Institute of America.
Oh, nice. Okay, the other CIA. Okay,
Yes.
right on. Okay, did not know that either. All right, and Jeff Church, welcome back to our show.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Wade. Something about me that people don't know. I climbed a lot of mountains, and I've done 5 of the 7 summits, and heading to one of the 2 that I haven't done, Everest, in about 6 weeks. Not necessarily going to try to summit, but going to base camp and taking 3 of my 4 kids with me. So my wife's not very happy about it, but we're going because it's a bucket list. It's a bucket list item for me.
Awesome. I can't even imagine how thin the air is up here. I mean, this is nothing compared to where you're going. So
Yeah.
bring lots of oxygen
I did want to
tanks.
make a comment, if you don't mind, though, Alex,
Sure.
about the gal that had to close her business.
Right.
It's if you do this enough, it's going to happen. It's not a condemnation on the person or the brand or anything. It's just, it happens. And I've had 3 companies that have failed, and they're brutal. I've had a daughter and a son that both had startup businesses that failed, and that's even more brutal to watch. But the thing about it is, you learn so much. The lateral thinking ability that you learn by being a founder of a CPG brand is just, it's incomprehensible. It's so significant. You learn about operations, you learn about marketing, sales, route to market, all that kind of stuff that you're going to have for the rest of your life. You've just gotten the best MBA you could have ever, wanted to get. So it might have cost you a bunch of time, a bunch of money, but for the rest of your life, you're going to have a skill set that very few people on the planet have. So try to look at it from a glass half full versus a glass half empty perspective.
Yeah, 100%. That's really great you're sharing that, Jeff. It's valuable. And I remember we talked a lot about, and you've mentioned it in interviews about Rowdy, right? The
Yes.
energy drink. So for those that don't know, can you give us a recap or whatever you're comfortable sharing about Rowdy and what you learned from that experience?
Well, I learned that energy drinks are a really, really, really difficult category to go into, even if they're better for you. But we built Rowdy up to about $20 million in revenue, about 25,000 doors, but we couldn't hold the velocity that the retailers required to maintain the shelf. I mean, because energy drinks turn so fast, like 6, 7, 8, units per store per week. And a new brand without the awareness, just it's very difficult to do that. So if you are in one of those competitive categories like hydration or energy, start super small and get your wins going, because if you try to go too big too quick, you're likely not going to be able to hold the shelf. But Rowdy I had a partner, Kyle Busch, who's a NASCAR driver, and I thought that would help tilt this in my favor a bit. And but I think what I didn't realize was NASCAR. I went with a better for you drink, and it was a NASCAR market, and drivers are, NASCAR fans really like their driver, but they don't tend to like a lot of the other drivers. I don't think it helped me a lot. But at 87 investors that combined put in $25 million. And, we ended up coming up with a great product, but we had investor fatigue towards the end, and people were kind of done with putting more money into it. So unfortunately we had to close it down, but they're really painful, right? Because it's 4 or 5 years of your life. It's a bunch of your investment capital, and, they're hard to do. And a lot of it has to do with timing, I think. You can have a great product and everything, but, timing was just not great for me with the energy drinks. Even though the better for you is happening, it's not happening quite as fast as people want to think. By the same token, the timing helped me with Suja, because we were a little bit later than Blueprint Cleanse and Evolution Fresh in getting into the HPP juice. So, they had to sell earlier, and we had good timing, but timing really matters.
Yeah, 100%. That's and I'm going to flip it over to John. And again, Jeff, thanks for sharing that and being very open, transparent about what happened with Rowdy. So, John, this is something that going off of Jeff's question, I see certain entrepreneurs that are like, let me take on this monster category with something better, right? A lot of competitors, you're going up against a lot of marketing dollars. That's one route. Or the other route is, let me do something kind of crazy, zany, and different where there's not a big market for it. And I have almost the market to myself, but there's not a lot of awareness around that category. So you have to do a lot of that heavy lifting to educate people. Which route would you recommend? Because both are tough. Like, what have you seen as a more successful strategy and go to market for a new brand, let's say?
Well, I mean, I think there's lots of success stories in both, and I wouldn't want to like tip one way or the other. They're both really hard. When you go somewhere where the category is well understood, you know, and you can differentiate and kind of create your place in the market and come on in, things can be a lot easier and can grow a lot faster. When you're trying to create something from scratch, which is kind of what we've done here at O Farm, yeah, you're alone, which is both a good and a bad, and you have to kind of develop the category and the awareness yourself. That's really hard. It takes a long time. So I don't think that there's one more preferred way. And because also you have to think across every category has its own unique dynamics and what channels are you going for, and is this going to be a grocery play, a specialty play? Are you trying to hit food service? What are you doing? There's so many different iterations, right? But I think there are paths. This is a really hard time. I've been just building a little on Jeff's comments and kind of getting at that. This is a really, in many ways, kind of a bipolar world we live in CPG. Like on one hand, it's the best time I've seen in my career for health and wellness products to break through and to potentially turn into really big businesses at some point. But at the other side, it's harder than it's ever been. Those are both true. And I think I would say one of the things that you often see in entrepreneurs and who have done it a few different times is they usually do have failure in their background. I mean, my first startup completely turfed. I mean, it didn't publicly turf in ways that people could see it, but the end result was the same thing. It ended up, merging into something else with no value for the investors, basically. And so I feel like oftentimes you see entrepreneurs out there and people see them and they may assign some value to the success that they can see, and they usually always think it's easier than it actually was. That's a truism I think is that I see. But usually entrepreneurs, most of the ones that have a hit, they generally have had a few misses. Like, and it to building on Jeff's thing, all that experience is so friggin' valuable. It actually increases the odds of your success in the next one like dramatically. So it's not wasted or lost time. It's just building a bank of experience for the future. So that's what I would say.
Cool.
It's a great perspective. It's a great perspective, and I think Jeff's analogy of a master's degree is well taken. And I think I've shared publicly many times, that my quote unquote college education was owning my own restaurant and filing for personal bankruptcy when it didn't work out. And but that was my education, at an early point, and I learned things that there's no school in the world that could have taught me, and it certainly helped pave me on the road where I am today. So it's tough, and I think again several people have said in the comments, and I think even Jeff said himself, it's not a damnation or condemnation by any means on the individual or the brand or the business as much as it's just things happen and you just move on. So great. Max, it's your turn to shine here, brother. What
Yeah.
do you have to say?
Well, I was just, I was thinking about all of these great thoughts here and how relevant it is to Fourth and Heart. I think we were fortunate to not go under, but we had very near misses. Like we were very, very close to doing so several times. And when I first took over in 2020, we were at a point where there was no additional capital in sight, and we were burning way too much money every month. It wasn't a tenable trend, And so, we went into sort of, disaster mode and scrambled to stay alive. And that took really hard work, honestly. I remember, middle of COVID, I was, pushing tons of late nights, working all day, trying to figure out anywhere we could find savings, negotiating with our vendors. We even got out of our office lease, which was a very, very expensive office lease. We used to be on Abbot Kinney Boulevard in Venice, if you're familiar with the area. Beautiful office, very on brand, but not good for the P&L. And so, yeah, I mean, we really had to prioritize, the things that absorbed most of our capital, and not only on the bottom line, not only within operational expenses, but also even in our product infrastructure. Our SKU set um, we rationalized down to drive more focus in the business and really focus on those SKUs that were profitable and making up the majority of our revenue. And we had to make a lot of tough choices. We had to cut out a lot of SKUs that had been around prior to my existence, and a lot of that didn't really feel good. And anyway, just fast forward a few years here, I'm so grateful for all the hard work that the team put in, and some of the sacrifices that we made along the way, because it helped us get into a position of strength. And we were able to turn the business around and really start showing growth again and demonstrate clear months of profit, quarters of profit. And we're now just trying to build the category of ghee. So we have our own challenges now in trying to drive that adoption of the category, but I'm also grateful for the tailwinds that I think we're seeing right now in the macro environment. I don't think they've actually been better.
Yeah, it's really interesting as I'm hearing the stories, and I think bipolar is a really great way to describe it, John, because there's the kind of the hustle and people mentioning on LinkedIn posts about the launches, the national launches, and going here, going there. And being an entrepreneur myself, and Wade as well, and everyone here, you're under some pressure, from investors to show good stuff, positivity, going into new stores, and not to publicize, obviously, any struggles. You don't want to publicize that. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good to investors, but you still have to be honest to your investors and honest to your team if something's not going right. And I feel that can be really detrimental and very stressful to an entrepreneur, where you're always saying the good stuff, you're posting, yet behind the scenes, you're struggling, you're running out of money, you're trying to get more money from investors to realize your goals, to eventually get a return for the investors. And so I see a lot of struggles there. And there's certain businesses, you have no idea they're struggling. You think everything's going right and they're crushing it, my least favorite word of all time. But then you hear a year later, 2 years later, that they go out of business or they're actually bankrupt. So this is really, it's a very challenging thing that these entrepreneurs are going through in CPG, to be pulled from both sides, the good stuff, but then the struggles in the background. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Open floor.
I'd like to add something to that, if I could, just real quick. Yeah, it is. It's when you're in that situation. I remember back, I was quite a bit younger, and it's one of the. It's very, very lonely and scary, and you do have this. You have this feeling like you have to put on a strong face, and there's pressure to like color the narrative positive, even if you see things that you struggle with. And one of the things that's changed a lot, which I'm very grateful for, which is why I go on podcasts like this and take a lot of phone calls from entrepreneurs and do this stuff just like everybody else on this call does, is that the community has gotten much, much bigger since, when I did my first thing in the 90s. It's much bigger. You have LinkedIn, you have all these people you can see, you can learn from and connect with, and reach out to others who are going through similar things and be real. And I'm very grateful for that. And the platform you guys are providing here is a perfect example of that. So, but it's your emotional health, your physical health, all those things can really get run down when you're facing that pressure, where there's existential risk to the business, and you have investors lots of times with unrealistic expectations when they invested to begin with, calling you and saying what's up. So
Yeah,
that's what
and
I'd say.
it's a lot of pressure. And you're one thing and I'm going to flip it over to Jeff is like, if something goes wrong or you're out of cash or a production issue, yes, you have a team, especially if you're an early stage emerging brand where you don't have all the resources of a larger brand. You're basically on your own to fix it. The CEO, the founder, the owner, they have to make the call. They have to work it out. If there's a fire, they got to put it out. And that creates a tremendous amount of stress, like you said, mentally and physically, on top of just running the company, but also dealing with the issues that come up that could literally sink the company the next day. So it's debilitating. It could be, that's the word, it's debilitating for some of these founders. And I've been through that myself. But Jeff, you work with a lot of founders, early stage emerging, in your workshops and your accelerators. Tell us, what are your thoughts on the subject?
Well, I think it is it's debilitating, but it's also exhilarating, right? I mean, it's that you're in this spot as a founder where I feel all the time, even as a consultant, I feel like I'm on that with the brands that I work with, but you're standing on the edge, looking into the abyss, and frankly, not knowing whether you're going to go into that. But equally, you feel like 50% of you is going to hit a home run, and it's going to be a grand slam, and it's going to change your life, and it's going to help people, and it's going to do all the things you want it to do. But then 50% of you feels like it's going to go into the abyss, and I think it's just our psyches, our brains, how it plays with it. But one way that I try to take that pressure off, and I do think that's one of the skills for an early stage founder that you have to have. You have to have a comfort level in staring into the abyss and being okay with that, because that's a real challenge. But one of the things I think you're talking about, investors, I try to be pretty transparent with them about what's going on, and versus, there's always some dirty laundry you want to hide, but I try to be pretty transparent, like in a quarterly update, with giving them or getting on the phone with them. And that's where I think if you with a board or even with investors, if you've got to put the time in to develop the relationships, so that if and when that moment does happen, and I think it pretty much happens in all businesses that are growing at a rapid rate, where there's just a lot going on, that there's going to be some shit hitting the fan. And I talk about it a lot. Fake it till you make it. Put lipstick on the pig. I mean that very affectionately, but these things are shit shows for a long time until they're not. And when they turn, they turn amazingly, but usually the first 3 years you're losing money, and the clock is ticking because you're running out of money month by month. So one piece of advice I'd give is, if you haven't clicked into taking all that money yet, you're still pre-revenue, is just stay in that spot, and just until you're able to really think through the strategies you want to implement. Because once you start taking money, the clock is ticking, and that puts an added pressure on you.
Yep, 100%. There's some good comments coming in. There's from Logan Niles. Welcome to our show. There's a balance. Burnout doesn't help anyone or any business. The hustle culture is toxic and helpful. But I agree with you, Jeff, that when you're in a spot where if there's pressure or stress, you can either choose to be stressed out by it, because we have a choice, right? It's 10%, 20%, let's call it, what happens to you. The other 80, 90% is how you handle what happens to you. So a positive perspective goes a long way in being an entrepreneur.
I'm just on that one point. One of the things I like to do is I call it peeling the onion back. And if I'm in a mood that I'm frustrated about something, it's usually not what's facing me right at that moment. I try to take time out, say, okay, let me peel the onion back, kind of one layer at a time. And then when I get all the way down to what it is, I feel a lot better, because I feel like, okay, I know this is an issue, but that's what's really bothering me. So let me work that problem. And, then you work that problem. And I don't know, it feels better when you start peeling it back.
Makes sense. And another comment from Sarah and then we're going to flip it over to John or Max. It's a balance. Fake it till you make it. It might be dead, but I'm a big believer in always looking for the silver lining, staying optimistic, focusing on what's working, and build with the resources we have. So here you go.
Good stuff. So not to completely change the subject, but we've got these three great minds and great leaders on this call. I want to talk a little bit. That's not doom and gloom. Let's try and put a positive spin on an outlook of where I mentioned I was just at Chex, their show this week, and the last time this group got together, we were coming off of Nosh Live. John, I know you were there, but the granddaddy of them all, if you will, is coming up, right? Expo West is around the corner, and we've got, John, your experience, you've probably been to more than your share of events. Max, your organization, I know you've different, as you're growing, you probably have a different outlook, and of course, Jeff, my question is when we look at Expo West coming up and your experiences, whether you want to talk about leading the teams you're leading currently or past experiences, we have a number of people listening right now and probably will be in the future with regards to whether it's their first show, they're at that pivot point where they're, do they go to the show? Do they pay for a booth and things like that? I'd like to talk just a little bit about that, John, if you will. Maybe start with you and then we can go around the room.
Sure. So I've always been a real big proponent of Expo. And I know there's some controversy about that, about is the ROI worth it or not. I would say, like, most of the time, if your brand is at the right place, meaning specifically what you want to accomplish there, it could be very specific. It could be I'm going to this show to lock down XYZ retailer, or to talk to these 4 people from Whole Foods, or to whatever it is. I think there's no better place than so many. I've seen just so many personally for companies I've been involved with, but also just for so many entrepreneurs, I've seen their business be made by connections and things that have happened at that show. Does that mean it's like risk free and the 20 grand or whatever you put into it, or it could be a hell of a lot more than that? But I'm just saying, like, at the lower level, that might not be the best money. Sure, there's always that risk, right? But it's just like anything else. So, and I think this year especially, I do one quick comment on the macro environment. The wind has been at the back of health and wellness for the last 30 plus years. It feels like a gale force right now, with just the conversation in the public around ultra processed foods and the connection between food and health and diet and all that stuff. It's so big right now. I think this is a year where there's going to be a lot of energy at that show, and I think I would be surprised if it's not extremely well attended by virtually every retailer in the country. And every retail in the country is dying and looking for great innovation now. Like, never been a higher point for that in my experience. I'm interested to see what these guys think. But anyway, so I'm a big fan. I think it's worth it.
I'm a
Max.
huge fan. Yeah, I'm a huge fan too. I echo everything that John just said. We've been going to Expo for 8 years, maybe 9 years. Actually, the way our route to market was because of Expo. Our founder back in the day said, "Screw it to the farmers markets." Went right to Expo, and we picked up one of our first big national retailers right at the show, and that's how Fourth and Heart kicked off. So we've always sort of had a special place for Expo in our hearts. But I think with Expo, my best advice is to focus on what you want out of the show. Kind of like what John said. I think you get out of Expo what you put in. If you're just building a pretty booth and just showing up and sampling, I don't think you're going to get the same ROI out of the show as you would if you go into it with intention. So, ahead of our show, we always, as a team, we've been working on it for months, since like Q4 maybe, and we basically have a running list of all the contacts of people that we want to meet with, and that goes for finance. So all of the investors in our business, we find time to meet with them and catch up. It goes for sales, obviously meeting with retail partners is one of our primary objectives, but also on the marketing side, finding partners, potential partners for the brand. Potential innovation out there, although last year I will say I didn't even get a chance to leave the booth. It was so busy. So I'm hopeful that this year I'll get a chance to walk the show faster, or a little bit with a little bit more time than having to run through it in the last hour. But I will say, just, a data point, we, out of that show, definitely had ROI positive years. Here we got some pretty big retail distribution hub, and also in Aldi. Another year we secured over $1 million of financing. The next year we got another rotation in Aldi. So things can materialize in a really big way if you put the effort.
Nice.
Yeah, I want to add one thing to that as well, because I agree with both, with John and Max. I think New Hope should have us on commission for this episode for sure. But
5%, 5%.
5%, yeah, that's it, and which would amount to a lot of money, because those booths are they're not cheap, and the entries or the tickets now, the badges are anywhere from a few $100 to $4,000 from what I saw on their website. But with all that said, Genius Juice did in 2019. I think was it the second year at North Hall? I believe. I think 18 was the first year. We were the second year at North Hall, and someone canceled. Like someone went out of business or something, and we grabbed the corner booth, right across from Once Upon a Farm, actually. And I think John, you probably remember that year. It was the last normal year for a few years. And Jennifer Garner showed up, and she was talking with people. We were across from Impossible Foods, and they were making stuff on stoves, which probably was that even legal for the fire department? Who knows? But it was a lot of fun. And what we did that really led to its success is we had runners and people, including myself, that went out and walked around the show floor, both at the main hall and the North Hall, and just said, hey, I'm Alex with Genius Juice, or whoever, one of my, partners that were out there. And we would send them back to the booth. We'd say, hey, we would love to talk more. We're in a hurry. I know you're in a hurry. We're walking on the show floor. Stop by our booth. Here's a flyer. Here's the booth number. Here's the directions. I would tell half the people it's right across from Once Upon a Farm. That's how you're going to find us. And we closed Albertsons Von Pavilions that year. We closed HEB that year. We closed Costco that year. So ultimately, it led to millions in revenue over the next 2 or 3 years. And I feel like there's two types of brands at Expo, and I'm going to flip it to Jeff after this to get his thoughts. But I feel there's like the established brands that are just there to be there, check a box. They're not being uber aggressive. They're just there to make sure that if anyone needs them, they're there. And then there's the emerging hungry brands that are like, I need business. We need POs. We need to sync up with investors. We need to impress them with a great booth and also have them meet the entire team. And then they're more hungry and they bring people over to the booth. So, but Jeff, what's been your experience? I'm sure you've attended many of them. What's your experience with Expo, and what has happened with your brands?
I think I agree with what the guys have said, that it's a great way because you've got efficient, there's lots of people at one place, and everybody's got a lot of demands on them, but you can connect with people. For example, Costco has, if you're into Costco and you're selling into there, they always have their Costco managers meeting in Anaheim, and then they're all at the show. So if the timing is right, you can all of a sudden get other regions to come visit your booth, and they kind of come in groups, and that's what a lot of the retailers do too. But I think pretty much it's been said. But I like the basement what hasn't been said. I guess the basement and the new products area, that seems to be where a lot of the investors go to look at products. It's the main floor that it feels like it's kind of dead in a lot of cases. So if you are new, try to be down in the basement or try to be up at the new products pavilion would be a suggestion.
Yeah, basement's where it's at.
Can I just add one thing too? I think if you're not quite ready to be there, your brand's a little bit too early or whatever, it's a great idea to just go. Just be there. Well, smuggle in a couple products in your bag or whatever.
Yeah.
And as you're walking around, you'd be surprised how many people you just run into, and just listen and learn, talk to other entrepreneurs. It's worth just doing that. Definitely.
That's great advice. Yeah, and also all the happy hours, if you can try to sneak into some of those and you can meet some buyers there and pass out samples. I think that's awesome advice. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that you can get the Expo West show famous ghee rilled cheese. That's ghee rilled cheese, grilled cheese, at our booth, at the 4th and Art booth. That's in the North Hall, N715.
Nice
Nice.
plug. And I'll echo everything. I won't belabor it, but I've said the story before, and I make it like 30 seconds or less, that we had 2014, we had the Genius Juice bottles, the blended coconut smoothies with no label. Same thing that John, you mentioned. I smuggled it in my bag, came in, ran into a gentleman named Sean Sugarman that some of you may know, who was the CEO of Evolution Fresh, and he was the president of Ojwala, and great guy. He actually oversaw the sale of Evolution Fresh to Starbucks, or he was there right before it happened, and he built the company up. And I showed him the product. He's like, smoothies are the future. Like, smoothies were dead for a while. Now they're coming back, and HPP and more healthy, clean smoothies. So yeah, give me a call. And I called him, I retained his services, and we both came up with the logo for the Genius Juice head, the iconic logo, which really helped us to grow the brand. So you never know who you're going to run into there, and you got to be open to those possibilities and be positive, right? So what's next? We have about 15 minutes left. Wade, what do we got?
Geez, we've covered a lot already. Well, I think it's a good segue, because talking about Jeff and his upcoming, the fundraising aspect, what he's going to be doing, and a little bit of Max's and John's background with that the investor piece. Why don't we start there?
Awesome.
Jeff, tell us what you got cooking and what's coming up, and maybe we can go back to the guys with what their thoughts are.
So one of the things I realized at Suja, I've tried to do like a deep dive and look at what went right and what went wrong, and a lot of things obviously went right. But I mean, today it's about a $400 million brand today, wholesale. But again, like I said, I did 11 fundraising rounds in 9 years, and that took a few body parts away from me. But what I wanted to do is kind of study, like, what could I have done differently? And I realized that this whole language of CPG is really like a foreign language. And if you're in it, if you've been in it, for a long time, it's like second nature to you, right? But if you're new to it, it's literally a foreign language for the first year. And I don't mean the linguistic parts of it, but I mean the activities and actions, that you go through. And if you don't have some mentoring, by someone that's been through it, you're going to make those same mistakes, and there's just no way around them. You're going to make the mistakes of doing something with KE and realizing all of a sudden that your trade spend at Sprouts is now 60% because you got 30% with Sprouts, and then you got an OI with KE. But you could have avoided, that. But you don't know what you don't know at that stage. So my goal has been, as I've been reflective, getting a bit older, is I want to work with founders and founding teams to help them improve their odds of success. And a business today starts out at maybe 15% probability of success, but I think you can get it to 50% with just some basic tools, and getting it above that, timing comes into play and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to kind of create some vehicles or tools for people. So we created a boot camp, which is about 40 hours of me talking. So that might be a little boring to some people, but it's kind of going through soup to nuts startup CPG model from starting to selling, and then it's got really great tools in it with a 5-year bottoms up model, a trade spend model, an inventory ordering model, which as you get further into it becomes a really big deal, especially if you have lots of components that you're buying that go into your final finished goods SKU. So trying to work with people through that, and also through an accelerator, which is more of a live session, and just help people become, get down the curve from that language standpoint. They were mentioning earlier, though, next week I have a free fundraising webinar on kind of soup to nuts CPG fundraising, and what techniques that have worked for me in the past, things that haven't, tools, steps. There's a bunch of 5 or 6 free tools that we're giving away. I think they put the link in the chat, but really trying to teach people, to learn the things that you don't need to make these mistakes on.
Yeah,
So
and
I appreciate, Alex, everything you guys have done by helping
Yep.
me push it out, and John, and it's great to have friends that are just such great people. So thank you.
I just wish I had something like that when I was coming up. Honestly, like I made every stupid mistake you could possibly make. I didn't make the 30 on 31, but I made some that were very close to that. So, like, like there's no excuse now to not reach out and learn and be curious. Like, there's just so many resources out there. It's hard, but I'm so appreciative to hear of that one, and I wish I would have done it.
Yeah,
years
it's
ago.
either, there's a great quote, which I'll mess up, is like, you can learn from your own mistakes, you can learn from other people's mistakes, or you can learn from other people's mistakes and then execute on that and go down the right road.
Yeah,
And I think the third one is the best. And yeah, just to reiterate, the link is in the chat, and we'll put it up there one more time. But Jeff Church is sponsoring this episode. But this is such an amazing. It's free. It's a workshop. The name of it is a Fundraise with Confidence free workshop for CPG entrepreneurs. Anyone that's has a CPG brand looking to raise money, which is 98.5% of them, right? I think everyone except GT Kombucha and a couple others. I'm being facetious there. There's others that have not fundraised, but a majority, to get to where you want to go faster, you're going to fundraise. So a lot of resources. And, I remember starting in 2014, there was no LinkedIn community. It was like my resume was up there. That was what it was used for. And now there's this really strong community of people that are on there helping each other and providing resources and sharing their mistakes so that you don't make the same mistake. And I think that's really valuable. So Jeff, thanks for doing that. And thank you for sponsoring us too.
I do think it's important though, Alex, that you have to be careful where you get your advice from. I think what's that adage go? Success has 1,000 authors and failure is an orphan, or something like that. And there must have been 1,000 founders of Vitamin Water. And in reality, I know that it was a very small group of people, but everybody wants to cling on to do that, and just be really careful in the advice that you get, because unless the person was like in the room or on the team that was actually making it happen, they may have been just along for the ride and really thought they were contributing a lot, but now they're imparting advice to you, which they really may not have been in that inner circle making those decisions and kind of understanding that. So just because there is so much information out there, just be careful with that information. Make sure you want to get the sources, or you're getting the information kind of vetted through 1 degree or 2 degrees of separation type stuff.
Good. Max, anything to contribute there as far as the whole fundraising aspect?
Yeah, fundraising is definitely the least enjoyable part of all of our jobs. I would think everyone would agree with that. It's tough. It takes a lot of. It's hard. It's hard to go right from dating to marriage, right? We use that term internally, and so it takes a lot of courting, a lot of networking, and honestly, finding alignment. I think is probably the thing I've learned over the years that's most important. You can bring money in, but if the money isn't aligned to what your vision is or what your strategy is, how you want to run the business, it can make things really difficult. So, of course, I think for a lot of companies that are raising capital, like there aren't as many options as sort of those A+ assets that have a list of investors waiting to throw money at it. So that makes it a little difficult to find that proper alignment. Sometimes you just need the money. But I'd say one piece of advice from me is, if you do have the option, make sure you really vet that and choose the partners that are going to support you in the tough times, because investors do tend to get sort of a negative association sometimes. And I don't think that's fair. I think sometimes investors can be really powerful for your brand, and also they can be really really important allies to you, and a good support system, because like John was saying earlier, when you're going through some of the tough times, it's really lonely, especially as a CEO, where you need to sort of manage, up and down. And so having folks that you can trust around you at the table, those that are actually invested in you, is really helpful in supporting you through some of those tough times.
Yep.
And through the good ones, of course.
Yep. 100%.
Hey, can I add 30 seconds on that?
Sure, you got it, John. Go ahead.
So, a quick thing to the point that Jeff made, which I totally agree. It's what you should do is when you get advice from somebody, triangulate it. Take
Yeah.
that advice, go to somebody else that you think would know, and triangulate it and see if you start getting consensus around that. Because you can very often get a lot of differences. That's a good way to root that out. And the second thing is watch out for, hey, we did this with this brand 10 or 12, 15 years ago, because the world is changing so friggin' fast that even what worked 5 years ago might not be right. And so just recognize the landscape's changing dramatically, how you reach consumers, digital channels, all that. So people are biased by what they know and what they've done, and they assume that's going to work everywhere. And at least half the time it won't.
Great point.
100%. One thing I'll add, we can go on again. This is why we have a second one. There may be a third one here. Is a lot of entrepreneurs are spontaneous because of our nature. We're go, 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 and okay, this is the route. Let's go. And then you get your whole legion, your army after that route, and you just charge forward, right? Like in Braveheart or something like that. And the one thing that I've learned of many things, but one thing I can definitely share on this show with the limited time is just go slower. You can still move efficiently and grow your business and be successful, but make decisions slowly, think about things, reflect, triangulate, as everyone else has been saying about getting advice and verifying that advice is right for you. But too many entrepreneurs move too fast where they get the advice and then they just run with it really quickly without doing the proper vetting or research. And a lot of the bigger mistakes we made at Genius Juice was getting the advice, moving forward really quickly, and not looking at the details or the long-term ramifications of that decision, right? How it might benefit us for a month or two. How's that going to benefit us a year or 2 years down the road? And one other thing I'll mention, I know that Max had his Guild cheese moment where he promoted himself. So I'm going to promote myself really quickly that I'll be on Jeff's fundraising workshop on day 3, right? February 6th at 9:45 a.m. to talk about crowdfunding. And I think there's a big, I call it the chasm, painful chasm in CPG that we all know, right? Where you're really early and you can raise some friends and family funds and you've proven out the concept. You're at $500,000 or maybe $1 million or a couple million revenue. You're not big enough to attract PE, private equity, or larger venture capital. So that middle zone is exactly what Jeff is teaching on, and probably more, to get that much needed capital to bridge it until you're big enough to get larger capital. And part of that, and what I'll be talking about is, and what I do for a living, is crowdfunding, how to raise on Start Engine or WeFunder to get that bridge capital, or possibly more, almost a mini Series A, up to $5 million through your community, and having people that invest anywhere from $100 up to 100,000. So I'll be talking about that on this workshop. Okay, so let's transition to our prize here. This has been a great show. We're gonna have a part 3. There's always gonna, it's the trilogy, right? We've had the New Hope, we've had Empire Strikes Back. We're gonna have the return of the CPG Jedis. I just coined that. All right, so let's go into it. Our prize, our sponsor for this episode is Jeff Church, and he's going to be offering up a one-on-one consultation session. He's built $100 million. They're at $400 million now, but he built it $100 million with Suja over 6 years, and now that legacy is continuing to grow. He's the original co-founder of Suja, and he has his workshop, as mentioned, Fundraise with Confidence, free workshop for CPG entrepreneurs. And because we're out of time here, I have the question. So whoever answers that will get the one-on-one with Jeff Church. And I just want to thank you guys again, John, Max, and Jeff, for joining us, taking your time to impart your wisdom to all the CPG community here at CPG Vibes. So the question is, it's a quick one. Genius Juice booth it was a corner booth. Who are we across from? What other booth?
There you go. We got to wait for the answers to come in. Get ready.
Yep. It'll be like nothing for 10 seconds and then they're a bunch at once. I'm just glad that it, maybe jinxing it, I didn't cut out up here in the mountains. It's been good reception for me. It's been terrible this morning, but it worked out for the show. All right. So again, what booth were we across from? The Genius Juice booth in 2019 at Expo West. What company?
There you go.
There we go. Impossible was one of them, but the one that we want to answer for is Once Upon a Farm. So Travis Gilkey, shoot us an email, cpgvibes100@gmail.com, and we'll connect you with Jeff for the prize.
Thanks, Travis.
All right, we'll have a part 3. So thank you guys. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next week, Friday, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock Eastern. Wade, take care, buddy. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks,
Hey,
guys.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.